The stale air in my office usually smells of old paper and forgotten coffee. Tonight, it smells like betrayal. A specific kind of betrayal, the expensive kind. $3 million expensive. The number glows on my monitor, a line item in a dense financial statement I wasn't supposed to see. Hidden deep within a corporate account, Mark assured me was just for boring tax stuff, darling. Nothing for you to worry your pretty head about, worry my pretty head. The condescension used to be a dull ache, something I'd learned to ignore like a misaligned tooth. Tonight, it's a razor blade, severing something vital. The document is titled Paradise Cove Holdings LLC, Property Acquisition, Unit 17, Unit 17. Such a bland name for the death of a marriage. My fingers tremble, hovering over the mouse. One more click, and I'll see the details I already know in my gut are true. The click sounds like a gunshot in the silent room. A floor plan materializes.
A sprawling beachfront villa.
3 bedrooms, infinity pool, private dock. And then, the registered owner of Paradise Cove Holdings LLC. Not Mark. No, he's not that stupid. It's a name I've seen before, scribbled on a cocktail napkin he'd carelessly left in a suit pocket months ago. Chloe Rains, a pretty name for a pretty problem. My breath catches. The room tilts, or maybe it's me. This isn't just an affair. This is an entirely new life he's building, brick by stolen brick, dollar by pilfered dollar. Our dollars. That $3 million isn't just money. It's our future, the one we'd sketched out over cheap wine and expensive dreams. It's the down payment on the vineyard we were supposed to buy in Napa. It's the security for our old age. It's gone. A cold, hard knot forms in my stomach. It's not just the money. It's the depth of the deception. The meticulous planning. The sheer, unadulterated gall. He's not just cheating on me. He's erasing me. If you've ever felt that sickening lurch, that moment where the floor drops out from beneath you, and everything you thought was solid turns to dust, tell me about it in the comments. I read them all. And if this is your first time here, finding your way into my little storm, please subscribe. It helps me rebuild piece by shattered piece more than you know. Our life, before Paradise Cove Unit 17, was a carefully curated masterpiece of mutual denial. Or so I see now. Then it felt comfortable. Predictable, yes, but in a way that felt like a warm blanket on a cold night. Mark was a whirlwind of ambition and charm, a man who could sell sand in the desert and make you thank him for it. I was the quiet anchor, the one who managed the details, the finances, the home, the life that allowed him to fly so high. We had a routine. Breakfast together, him scanning headlines, me making mental lists. Evenings, often him working late, me reading or working on my own quiet investments, a little portfolio I'd built over the years, a secret garden of financial independence he knew about but never paid much attention to. Pocket money, he'd called it once, with an indulgent smile. That smile curdles in my memory now. Our desires had once seemed aligned. A comfortable retirement, travel, maybe those grandchildren we talked about when we were younger, before his ambition consumed the softer parts of him. We'd built a small empire together, a string of successful niche retail businesses. He was the face, I was the framework. He basked in the spotlight, I made sure the stage didn't collapse. I thought we were a team. I thought the quiet hum of our life was contentment. Now I realize it was the sound of a bomb ticking. There were signs, of course. Hindsight is a cruel editor, highlighting every missed cue, every ignored whisper of doubt. The late nights becoming later, smelling not of his office, but of a perfume I'd known. The hushed phone calls he'd taken another room, his voice dropping to that intimate murmur I hadn't heard directed at me in years. The way he'd started looking at me, or rather, through me, as if I were a pane of glass obscuring a more interesting view. I'd chalked it up to stress, business pressures, midlife restlessness. I'd made excuses for him, for us. I'd wanted to believe in the comfortable lie, because the alternative was this cold, stark revelation on a glowing screen in a silent office. This Unit 17. The inciting incident wasn't just the line item. It was the digital paper trail that followed. Paradise Cove Holdings LLC, a shell corporation set up 3 months ago. The registered agent, a lawyer I didn't recognize. But the signatory on the subsequent property deed for Unit 17, that name hit me like a physical blow. Chloe Rains. The same Chloe whose name I'd seen on that napkin. The same Chloe whose perfume, a cloyingly sweet gardenia, I'd occasionally, faintly, smelled on his shirts. He hadn't even bothered to be particularly creative with his tracks. Or maybe he just thought I was too stupid, too complacent, to ever look. The property wasn't just any vacation home. Paradise Cove was a new, ultra-exclusive development on a secluded stretch of coastline I'd once, ironically, pointed out to him in a travel magazine, saying, "Imagine retiring there one day." He'd just grunted, not looking up from his phone. Now I know he was probably messaging her, planning their future in my dream location. The $3 million was drawn from a joint business account, one I had access to but rarely monitored closely. Trusting his assertions that it was for operational cash flow, he'd siphoned it out in chunks, masking it with vague descriptions. Consulting fees, project investment, strategic allocation, lies. All of them. Each transaction was a tiny hammer tap against the foundations of our marriage, and I hadn't heard a thing.
The scale of it was breathtaking.
Not just an apartment, but a luxurious villa. Not just a fling, but a fully funded alternative life. He wasn't just dipping his toe in infidelity. He was diving headfirst into a new existence, using our shared resources as a springboard. The cold knot in my stomach tightened, hardening into something sharp and jagged. Disbelief was a luxury I couldn't afford for long. The evidence was irrefutable, laid out in sterile black and white on the screen. The only warmth in the room was the angry flush creeping up my neck. My first instinct was to scream, to call him, right then, and unleash a torrent of accusations, of pain, of pure, unadulterated rage. My hand even reached for the phone, my thumb hovering over his contact.
But something stopped me.
A sliver of ice amidst the fire. What would it achieve? He'd deny it. He'd gaslight me. He'd twist it, make it my fault, my paranoia, my misunderstanding.
He was good at that.
Years of practice.
No.
Screaming was a release, not a strategy. And suddenly I needed a strategy. The shock gave way to a strange, chilling calm. The world outside my office window, the distant city lights, the silent, indifferent stars, seemed to hold its breath. My own breath hitched, then steadied. Sleep became an elusive stranger. The nights were endless stretches of staring at the ceiling, replaying every shared memory, every casual touch, every spoken word, now filtered through the sickening lens of his betrayal. Was any of it real? His laughter, his promises, his "I love yous, were they all performances? I felt like an archaeologist sifting through the ruins of a life, finding only shards and dust where I thought there were treasures. I tried to maintain a facade of normalcy with Mark. It was the hardest acting job of my life. Every morning, I'd make coffee, my hands shaking slightly as I handed him his mug. His casual "thanks, love" felt like a slap. His touch, when he'd brushed past me in the hallway, made my skin crawl. I watched him, a scientist observing a particularly loathsome specimen. His casual arrogance, his confident stride, the way he occupied space as if he owned the world. And in a way, he thought he did.
He thought he owned me.
The early struggles weren't just emotional, they were practical. I started digging deeper, carefully, meticulously. Late nights became my sanctuary, not for sleep, but for investigation. I learned to navigate the labyrinth of online records, corporate filings, social media's deceptive breadcrumbs. Chloe Rains. She was younger, of course. A vapid Instagram influencer, all pouting lips and carefully curated authenticity. Her feed was a monument to materialism, conspicuously absent of Mark, but filled with the lifestyle he was clearly funding. Luxury gifts, exotic trips that coincided with his business conferences. It was a grotesque cliché, and I was living in it. I felt a profound sense of isolation. Who could I tell? My friends? They'd offer sympathy, outrage, perhaps, but they wouldn't understand the cold fury that was beginning to solidify in my core. This wasn't just about a broken heart.
This was about theft.
Grand larceny of my life, my future, my trust. And the thief was sleeping beside me every night, oblivious. Or perhaps not entirely oblivious. He seemed more chipper, more animated. There was a spring in his step, a smug little curl to his lips I hadn't noticed before, or had dismissed. He was a man enjoying the fruits of his deception, believing he'd gotten away with it. That smugness was like fuel on the fire. The days bled into weeks, each one a tightrope walk over a chasm of suppressed emotion. Mark grew bolder, more careless. The late nights became more frequent, the excuses flimsier. Networking event, client dinner, putting out fires. He probably thought my silence was acquiescence, my continued presence a sign of oblivious devotion. The arrogance was astounding. He'd sometimes hum, a cheerful, tuneless sound, as he got ready for these fictitious engagements, selecting his best suit, a spritz of expensive cologne. Each hum was a nail hammered into my resolve. The financial strain of his secret life began to show, not on him, but in the business accounts I meticulously monitored. The $3 million for Paradise Cove was just the beginning. There were other, smaller drains. Lavish gifts, 5-star hotel stays, first-class airfare for two that mysteriously only had his name on the company expense report. He was treating our shared business like his personal piggy bank, and Chloe was the gleeful recipient. I gathered my evidence, file by digital file, printout by printout. Each one was a testament to his deceit, and each one hardened my heart a little more. The sheer volume of it was overwhelming. It wasn't just a dalliance, it was a parallel life, carefully constructed and lavishly funded. My quiet portfolio, my pocket money, suddenly felt like my only lifeline in a stormy sea. It was significant more than he knew. I'd always been cautious, investing wisely, reinvesting dividends, letting it grow in the shadows of our main businesses. He'd occasionally ask about it, a dismissive, "How's your little hobby going?" I'd just smile and say, "It's fine, it was more than fine." It was my war chest. But even that, I knew, wouldn't be enough for what was slowly, terrifyingly, beginning to form in my mind. The isolation was the hardest part. I moved through my days like a ghost, haunting my own life. Smiles felt like facial contortions. Conversations were echoes. The only reality was the cold, hard screen of my laptop at 2 a.m., the glowing words and numbers that spelled out his treachery. I confronted him once, indirectly. "Business finances look a little stretched, Mark. Are we over-leveraged anywhere?" He'd waved a dismissive hand. "Don't you worry your pretty head about it, darling. I've got it all under control. Big plans are brewing." Big plans. His eyes had a feverish gleam. He was high on his own duplicity. That pretty head comment again. It used to make me feel small. Now, it just made me angry. A cold, calculating anger that was far more dangerous than any screaming fit. The shift happened on a Tuesday. I remember the oppressive grayness of the sky, the relentless drizzle that mirrored the state of my soul. I was tracing the ownership of Paradise Cove Developments, the larger entity behind Unit 17. It was a new company, ambitious, looking to make a name for itself with this flagship luxury project. And then I saw it, a small news item, buried on a financial website. Paradise Cove Development secures Phase 2 funding, eyes rapid expansion. Full site acquisition pending, full site acquisition. Not just a few villas. The entire development. The land, the future construction phases, everything. The article mentioned they were looking for a majority investor, someone to buy out the initial backers and take the project to the next level. An idea, wild and audacious, sparked in the darkness of my mind.
It was terrifying.
It was insane. It was perfect. What if I wasn't just a victim in the story? What if I could change the narrative? He'd bought her a $3 million cage in a golden paradise. What if I bought the whole damn paradise? The thought sent a jolt through me, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. It was a monumental task, far beyond my pocket money portfolio. It would require leveraging everything, risking everything. But the image of Mark's face, of Chloe's face, when they realized, it was intoxicating. My strategy shifted. The grief, the hurt, they were still there, a dull, constant ache. But now they were overlaid with a layer of icy resolve. I stopped thinking about saving the marriage. That ship had sailed, torpedoed by Unit 17. Now I was thinking about justice. My kind of justice. I started researching. Deep dives into Paradise Cove Development's financials, their investors, their vulnerabilities. They were ambitious but overstretched. Classic developer syndrome. They needed a cash infusion, and they needed it fast. My pretty head started working like never before. I began to liquidate parts of my portfolio, carefully, strategically, trying not to spook the market or raise any red flags. I contacted my old mentor, a retired investment banker, a sharp old hawk named Eleanor, who had taught me the ropes years ago. I laid out the situation, omitting the personal details, framing it purely as a high-stakes, high-reward investment opportunity. Eleanor, bless her cynical heart, didn't pry. She just saw the numbers, the potential. "It's a shark play, kid," she'd said, her voice raspy over the phone. "You sure you have the teeth for it?" I looked at the picture of Unit 17 I had printed out, at the smug, smiling photo of Chloe I'd found online. "Oh, Eleanor," I whispered, "I'm growing them." The decision was made. I was no longer just going to weather the storm. I was going to become the storm. The path to acquiring a majority stake in Paradise Cove Development was a minefield. Every step was fraught with risk. My initial liquid assets, though substantial, were only a down payment on the kind of capital required. I had to get creative and fast. Eleanor, true to her word, opened doors. She introduced me to private equity firms, to lenders who specialized in high-risk, high-yield ventures. Each meeting was a performance. I had to be confident, knowledgeable, ruthless. I had to sell them on a vision, on my ability to turn Paradise Cove into a gold mine, all while my insides were churning with a toxic brew of anxiety and adrenaline. Mark remained blissfully, arrogantly unaware. He was too caught up in his own clandestine world, too busy managing his affair and siphoning funds for Chloe's increasingly extravagant tastes. He saw my late nights, my preoccupation, as signs of my usual diligence, my quiet support for his endeavors. The irony was a bitter pill I swallowed daily. There were moments of sheer panic. A major investor I was counting on pulled out at the last minute, spooked by a downturn in the market. I spent a sleepless 48 hours scrambling, calling in every favor, leveraging every connection Eleanor had, to find a replacement. The stress was immense. I lost weight. Dark circles became permanent fixtures under my eyes. But every time I felt like giving up, I'd picture Unit 17. I'd picture Mark and Chloe, laughing, toasting their stolen happiness on my dime, in my dream location. And the cold fury would return, sharpening my focus, fueling my determination. I had to create a new shell corporation just like Mark had, but mine was legitimate, transparent, at least to my new partners. It was an intricate dance of lawyers, accountants, and bankers. I learned a new language, the language of leveraged buyouts, of hostile takeovers, of crushing debt, and astronomical rewards. I was playing in a league I'd never imagined, all while maintaining the charade of the dutiful, slightly oblivious wife at home. The duality was exhausting. One evening, Mark came home earlier than usual, looking pleased with himself. He draped an arm around my shoulders. "Good news, darling," he said, his breath smelling faintly of Chloe's gardenia perfume. "That big project I've been working on? It's about to pay off. Big time. We're going to be richer than we ever dreamed." I forced a smile. "That's wonderful," Mark inside. I felt a chill. His big project was clearly tied to his plans with Chloe. He was probably anticipating the sale of our existing businesses, planning to abscond with the lion's share. The timeline was contracting. I had to move faster. The deepening crisis wasn't just financial, it was emotional. The closer I got to my goal, the more I realized there was no going back. This wasn't just about teaching Mark a lesson. This was about dismantling our entire life, Everything we had built, or I thought we had built. The victory, if it came, would be hollow in many ways. But the alternative, letting him win, letting him erase me and ride off into the sunset with her on the back of his treachery, that was unthinkable. The turning point came during a tense, multi-day negotiation with the original backers of Paradise Cove development. They were playing hardball, trying to squeeze every last penny out of the deal. My consortium of investors was getting nervous. The numbers were astronomical. The risk felt unbearable. I was in a sterile boardroom, surrounded by men in dark suits, their faces grim. My own face, I imagined, was a mask of calm, but inside, a hurricane raged. We were at an impasse. They wanted more. I had offered everything I could. My lead negotiator, a slick lawyer Eleanor had recommended, leaned over. "We might have to walk away," he whispered. "They're not budging. Walk away? After all this? After the sleepless nights, the risks, the sheer audacity of the plan? Let Mark win?
No.
Not an option." I looked at the faces across the table. They were gamblers, just like me, but they thought they had the stronger hand. I needed an ace. And then it hit me. An idea so simple, so direct, it was almost insulting. I excused myself, walked out of the boardroom, my heels clicking on the marble floor with a decisiveness I didn't entirely feel. I called Eleanor. "They're stalling," I said, my voice tight. "They want more equity than we agreed." Eleanor was silent for a moment. Then, "What's your gut telling you, kid?" My gut. My gut was telling me they were bluffing. They needed this deal as much as I did. Paradise Cove was their baby, but it was a baby drowning in red ink without a massive infusion of cash. "They're desperate," I said. "More desperate than they're letting on." "Then call their bluff," Eleanor said, her voice firm. "But do it with style. Don't just threaten to walk. Make them an offer they can't refuse, but one that puts you firmly in control." I went back into the boardroom. The air was thick with tension. I stood at the head of the table. "Gentlemen," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "We've been at this for days. My final offer is on the table. However, to show my commitment to the future success of Paradise Cove, I am prepared to add a personal guarantee, backed by my private assets, for an additional 10% of the initial operational funding post-acquisition." There was a stunned silence. A personal guarantee of that magnitude was almost unheard of. It was a massive gamble. If Paradise Cove failed, I wouldn't just lose my investment. I'd be personally ruined.
My lawyer looked at me, aghast.
The men across the table exchanged glances. Their bluff had been called, and then some. They saw not desperation, but an ironclad commitment. They saw someone willing to put her entire personal fortune on the line. It was a power play, pure and simple. 15 minutes later, the deal was done. I had controlling interest in Paradise Cove development. All of it. Every grain of sand, every blade of grass, every yet-to-be-built villa. Including Unit 17. A wave of dizziness washed over me, followed by a surge of terrifying, triumphant energy. There was no turning back now. I had bet everything. The armor I'd been forging, piece by piece, since that night in my office, felt complete. It was cold, heavy, but it was mine. Mark had been unusually smug for weeks. He'd whistle in the mornings, a jaunty, irritating tune. He'd pat my hand with a new, almost pitying affection. "Just a little longer, darling," he'd say, his eyes distant, already envisioning his new life. All our hard work is about to pay off. He had no idea. He was, I knew, finalizing the sale of several of our key retail businesses. He'd structured the deals, with his usual cunning, to ensure the bulk of the proceeds flowed into accounts he solely controlled. He thought he was being clever, preparing his escape fund. He was, in effect, liquidating our shared past to finance his future with Chloe. He'd even started talking about a celebratory vacation. "Just the two of us," he'd said, avoiding my eyes. "A real getaway. We deserve it." The hypocrisy was so thick, I could barely breathe. The two of us he meant was clearly him and Chloe. And their destination, I had no doubt, was Unit 17, Paradise Cove. My villa. My development. The day came. I timed it perfectly. The sale of our businesses closed in the morning. The funds, a very substantial sum, hit his private accounts. I watched the transactions online, a cold satisfaction settling in. He was a caricature of a man on the brink of what he thought was a great escape. He called me around noon, his voice practically vibrating with excitement. Darling, it's done.
The deals are closed.
We're rich. I mean, really rich. I'm taking off for a few days to finalize a few more details on a new venture.
À surprise.
I'll call you from Paradise. Paradise. The irony was almost too much. I knew, from my discreet inquiries, that Chloe had flown down to the coast the day before. They were planning a celebratory weekend at their love nest, their stolen haven. My sources confirmed Mark's arrival at the local private airfield that afternoon. He'd be heading straight to Paradise Cove. Straight to Unit 17. The trap was set. The new board of Paradise Cove Development, with me as the majority shareholder and chairwoman, had convened an emergency meeting that morning via video conference. My first official act. Effective immediately, I had announced, my voice echoing slightly in the large, empty office I'd rented for this new chapter. All access privileges to Unit 17 are revoked pending a full review of its irregular acquisition. Furthermore, a formal eviction notice is to be served to its current unauthorized occupants, Ms. Chloe Rains and any associates, by end of day. Security will escort them from the premises. My lawyer, the slick one Eleanor recommended, had raised an eyebrow but dutifully drafted the notices. He was starting to understand that I wasn't just an investor, I was a woman on a mission. The news, I ensured, would not reach Mark or Chloe directly. Not yet. I wanted them to have their moment, their brief, illusory triumph. Let them unpack. Let them pop the champagne they undoubtedly brought. Let them toast to their cleverness, their future. The real communication would come from me. In person. The drive down to Paradise Cove was long. Each mile was a countdown. The sun was beginning to set as I pulled up to the main gate of the development. My development. The security guard, a new hire, recognized me from the photos circulated by the new management. "Good evening, Madam Chairwoman," he said, his voice respectful. He waved me through. I drove slowly along the winding private road, past manicured lawns and stunning, architecturally designed homes, each one a testament to luxury and exclusivity. And each one, now under my control. Unit 17 was at the far end, perched on a bluff overlooking the ocean, the most desirable lot in the entire place. Of course it was. Mark always had expensive taste, especially when someone else was footing the bill. Lights blazed from within. I could hear faint music, the clink of glasses. Laughter. Chloe's laughter, high-pitched and giddy. I parked my modest rental car a little way down the drive, hidden by a mature hibiscus hedge. For a moment, I just sat there, my hands gripping the steering wheel. The salty air, the sound of the waves, the scent of night-blooming jasmine. It was all exactly as I'd once dreamed. But the dream had become a battleground. I took a deep breath. The cold armor was in place. No fear. No hesitation. Just a chilling resolve. I got out of the car. My heels crunched on the gravel driveway. As I approached the sprawling villa, I saw them through the floor-to-ceiling glass doors leading to the patio. They were dancing a slow, intimate dance, champagne flutes in hand. Mark was whispering in Chloe's ear, and she was giggling, throwing her head back. They looked happy. Untouchable. The picture of illicit bliss. The rage, which I thought I had buried under layers of ice, flared hot and fierce for a moment. I let it burn, then banked it. Cold was better.
Cold was a weapon.
I walked up to the massive front door, intricately carved wood that probably cost more than my first car. I didn't knock. I used the master key card that the new head of security had discreetly provided me that afternoon. The lock clicked open with a soft electronic sigh. I pushed the door inward. They didn't hear me at first. The music, some dreadful pop song, was too loud. I walked into the grand foyer, my footsteps silent on the polished marble. The villa was opulent, vulgar almost, decorated in a style I could only describe as nouveau riche brothel, Chloe's taste, no doubt. I cleared my throat, loudly. The music stuttered as Mark fumbled with his phone, his back still to me. "What the?" he started, turning. And then he saw me. His face. I will never forget the look on his face. It went through a kaleidoscope of emotions in a matter of seconds. Confusion. Annoyance. How dare I interrupt his romantic idyll? Then, dawning horror as recognition set in. His jaw literally dropped. The champagne flute slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble floor, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. Chloe, still clinging to him, turned, her perfectly made-up face a mask of surprise, then petulance. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice shrill. Mark couldn't speak. He just stared at me, his eyes wide, his skin turning a sickly gray. "Hello, Mark," I said, my voice calm level.
Deadly.
"Enjoying the accommodations?" He finally found his voice, a strangled whisper. What are you doing here? How did you get in?" "I let myself in," I said, holding up the master key card. "Perks of ownership, you know," Chloe scoffed. "Ownership? Don't be ridiculous. Mark bought this place for me." She looked at Mark for confirmation, but he was still staring at me, a dawning, terrifying understanding creeping into his eyes. "Oh, he bought this unit, yes," I agreed, a thin smile playing on my lips. "With money he stole from our businesses. $3 million, wasn't it, Mark?" "A lovely little love nest," Mark started to stammer. "Now, listen, there's an explanation. This isn't what it looks like." "Isn't it?" I tilted my head. "It looks like my husband bought his mistress a very expensive vacation home with our money. But the truly interesting part, Mark, isn't this tacky little villa." I took a step closer. He flinched. "The interesting part is that while you were busy playing sugar daddy, I was busy too. I bought Paradise Cove development. All of it. The land, the existing properties, the future expansion. Every grain of sand, every blade of grass, every brick and stone." Chloe let out a little gasp. Her eyes darted between me and Mark, confusion warring with a flicker of fear. Mark swayed slightly. You what? That's impossible, is it?" I allowed myself a small, dry chuckle. "You always did underestimate me, Mark. Too busy admiring your own reflection to notice what your quiet, dutiful wife was capable of. While you were embezzling funds for your little project here," I gestured around the room with contempt, "I was leveraging everything, including my pocket money portfolio, to acquire a controlling interest in the entire development. As of this morning, I am the chairwoman of the board." The color drained completely from Mark's face. He looked like he'd been punched in the gut. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He clutched his chest. "So, you see," I continued, my voice relentless, "you didn't just buy your mistress a house. You bought her a house on my property. And as the new owner, I'm afraid I have some bad news." I paused for effect. Unit 17's acquisition was irregular. Highly irregular. In fact, it's currently under investigation for fraud. And as such, all access privileges have been revoked. Chloe finally spoke, her voice trembling. "You can't do this. Mark owns this house." "Mark thought he owned this house," I corrected gently. "But the paperwork, it seems, tells a different story. And ultimately, I own the paperwork." Mark was making strange gulping sounds. His eyes were wide with a terror I'd never seen in him before. This wasn't just about losing a vacation home. This was about losing everything. His stolen money, his reputation, his freedom. He knew what fraud meant. "The security team will be here shortly," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "They have instructions to escort Ms. Rains off the premises. You, Mark, will be staying. We have a lot to discuss. Business, you understand." He stared at me, his face ashen. The arrogance, the smugness, all of it had vanished, replaced by a raw, primal fear. He tried to take a step, perhaps towards me, perhaps away, I'll never know. He stumbled. His hand went to his chest again, and this time he gasped, a wheezing, painful sound. And then he collapsed. Just crumpled, like a puppet with its strings cut. He hit the marble floor with a sickening thud, right next to the shattered champagne flute. Chloe screamed, a genuine, terrified sound this time. For a moment, even I was stunned. This wasn't part of the plan. For a beat, the world stopped. Chloe was shrieking, a piercing, ugly sound that grated on my already frayed nerves. Mark lay sprawled on the pristine marble, his eyes wide and unseeing, his chest still. My carefully constructed armor cracked, just for a second, and a sliver of something cold and unfamiliar, not triumph, but a hollow dread, pierced through. Was he dead? My God, had I killed him? Not with a weapon, but with words, with the sheer, crushing weight of his downfall. Then instinct, or perhaps some lingering residue of the woman I used to be, kicked in. Call an ambulance. I snapped at Chloe, who was just standing there, wringing her hands, her mascara starting to run in thick, black rivulets down her cheeks. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers slick with panic. I knelt beside Mark. His skin was clammy, his breathing shallow, ragged. A pulse, thready but there, fluttered beneath my fingers at his neck. Not dead. Not yet. The security team arrived, drawn by Chloe's screams, followed closely by the local paramedics Chloe had managed to summon. The scene descended into a kind of controlled chaos. Paramedics worked over Mark, barking medical jargon. Chloe sobbed hysterically in a corner, comforted, rather awkwardly, by a burly security guard. And I just stood there, watching the wreckage of my life, of his life, unfold under the garish lights of his stolen paradise. He'd had a massive heart attack. Stress-induced, the paramedics said later. The shock of his world imploding had literally broken his heart. They stabilized him, rushed him to the nearest hospital. Chloe, after a brief, tearful attempt to accompany him, "He's my everything," she'd wailed, a claim that rang hollow even in the midst of the crisis, was firmly but politely escorted off the property. Her designer luggage, hastily packed, was placed in the back of a taxi. Her reign in Paradise Cove had been remarkably short-lived. I was left alone in the opulent, silent villa. The air still smelled faintly of her gardenia perfume, now mixed with a sterile scent of medical supplies. Shattered glass crunched under my heel. It felt empty. The victory I had planned, the cold satisfaction I had anticipated, was tainted with a bitter, metallic taste. There was no elation, just a profound, aching weariness. Mark survived. Barely. He spent weeks in the hospital, followed by months of rehabilitation. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a fragile, broken shell of a man. The legal battles were messy, but my position was unassailable. I had the evidence, I had the power, I had the best lawyers my pocket money could buy. The fraudulent acquisition of Unit 17 was unwound. The money he'd siphoned from our businesses was largely recovered, though some had vanished into Chloe's designer wardrobe and lavish trips. She disappeared from the scene quickly once the money dried up, her Instagram feed reverting to less glamorous, but perhaps more honest, selfies. Our divorce was swift and brutal, at least for him. He lost everything. His health, his reputation, his share of the businesses we'd built. He was left with a fraction of what he'd once commanded, enough to live on, but not enough to ever reclaim his former glory. He never fought it. He seemed to have no fight left in him. As for Paradise Cove, it thrived. Under my leadership, it became a model of sustainable luxury, ethically managed, financially sound. I sold Unit 17, using the proceeds to start a foundation supporting women entrepreneurs, women who, like me, had been underestimated. Sometimes I walk the beaches of Paradise Cove. It is beautiful. Objectively, undeniably beautiful. But it will always be, for me, a place of ghosts. The ghost of my marriage, the ghost of the man Mark used to be, or I thought he was. The ghost of the woman I was before I had to forge armor and go to war. The victory wasn't sweet. It was necessary. It was about reclaiming not just money, but my dignity, my power, my future. The cost was high. A part of me died with that marriage, with that confrontation. But another part was born. Stronger. Colder, perhaps. But alive. and free. The world no longer feels like it's holding its breath around me. Now, I'm the one who decides when to breathe, when to act, when to build, and when to burn it all down. If this story hit close to home, if you've ever had to find that steel in your spine you didn't know you possessed, I'd love to hear your version in the comments below. Your stories, your strength, they matter. Thanks for being here, for listening to mine. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life, and I appreciate every single one of you.